Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, after a 3-year battle to shake up the Police Federation, Steve White has called it a day, announcing he'll leave his post at the end of the year. Mr White has been trying to reform the organisation, which represents rank-and-file officers. Not only was it beset by an alleged culture of bullying and heavy drinking, it also faced criticism over its expenditure and management. I'll be talking to Mr White in a moment, but first, here's our senior Home Affairs correspondent, Simon Israel.
It isn't police pride which hits you, it's police despair.
It's not the first time police morale was said to be at an all-time low. It was the same back in the 70s. Only today, in 2017, the rank-and-file numbers said to be suffering has risen to 3 out of every 5 officers. According to the Police Federation survey, the West Midlands is one of the worst forces affected.
The demands that are placed upon them with the resources they have available mean it's very difficult for them to go and do the job, and that's probably the main cause of the low morale that they're suffering. They want to do a good job, but the demands of the public and the calls upon them for the service that they need to provide just aren't being met because of the low numbers of officers that we have to deploy to those incidents.
It's an unrelenting picture the Federation's been portraying for years. Its chair has continually blamed the cuts, despite Theresa May's famous Cry Wolf speech 2 years ago.
Our country is safer than it has ever been. So please, for your sake, and for the thousands of police officers who work so hard every day, this crying wolf has to stop.
We have to put up with the criticism, the abuse, the jeering and dirty looks, the scowls of anger and derision. And that was just from you at our conference last year, Home Secretary.
That was the year 2014, when Steve White was elected chair on the toss of a coin, after Theresa May had warned the Federation to clean up its act.
The Federation was created by an Act of Parliament, and it can be reformed by an Act of Parliament. If you do not change of your own accord, we will impose change on you.
But Steve White's chosen a day morale's rock bottom to announce he's to resign in December after 3 years of trying to reform the organisation.
The reform agenda is well underway. We've given a commitment to completing all the recommendations that are within that review, and as I said, the majority of those are already either complete or waiting on the government to sign the legislation to enable it to come into force.
The Home Office is shortly to consult on final changes to regulations, but allegations of fraud, corruption and a 70s culture still pervade. Will Riches, who lost on that toss of the coin, is facing possible criminal charges over an alleged £1 million fraud of Federation funds. And another fraud investigation is said to be nearing completion.
And Steve White joins me now. So why are you going? I mean, you made it clear at the Police Fed conference year after year, this has been a really hard job.
Yes, it has, and I think, I came into this role with my eyes wide open. Policing is a difficult job, chairing the Federation is a difficult job. But in terms of timing, the 31st of December, the consultation will be complete in relation to the new regulations that constructs the new organisation. On the 31st of December, that work will be complete. I was elected to deliver that, and on the 31st of December, it will be delivered. I want to go back into policing. I've got more to give. It's time to move on.
But the truth is you have been struggling both within the organisation and without. I mean, you've had to take on a government that has cut police numbers and police morale is at an all-time low.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been hugely challenging. It's been hugely challenging to deal with successive governments, with successive Home Secretaries, and to make sure that the police officers up and down the country who deserve the support of the government are listened to. And that is the primary role of the Police Federation. And I think certainly over the last 3.5 years that I've been chairing the organisation, we've rebuilt some relationships with the government so we can have some proper constructive conversations.
But when you look back at Theresa May accusing you of crying wolf, what do you think?
Well, I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating, isn't it? Because I think it's demonstrated that a lot of what we have been saying and what I have been saying personally, now there is a crescendo of other voices saying, actually, we've cut too far, too fast. We need to continue the job of police reform, but it needs to be done in a way that is going to benefit our members and is going to benefit the public. And we don't always agree on that.
What about what Simon Israel called the 70s culture?
Well, the culture in policing has changed significantly in the 29 years that I've been a serving officer.
But it's still there,
and
isn't it?
It continues to change. Changing structures in an organisation is relatively straightforward, even though you have to do it through Act of Parliament as we do. Changing culture takes a long, long time.
But didn't you face a lot of resistance? I mean, you know, you had these sort of secret bank accounts, there's where the money was being spent, there was a lot of boozing, and there were people within your organisation who were fighting you.
Well, some of it was nonsense. Some of it was destructive, undoubtedly. I set out my agenda very clearly when I took over as chair in terms of a new culture that we needed to drive in the organisation. And the vast majority of the organisation wholly agrees with that and has delivered that. It's not just me that's been delivering this. It's many, many people up and down the country. Steve Grange, you saw in that film in the West Midlands. It's those people that are changing the organisation for the better. And I think they've done a tremendous job.
But you will acknowledge there are still big question marks and possible cases over this culture and whether it really has changed.
Well, the job is never complete in terms of changing culture, whether it be policing in general or whether it be within the Police Federation. We've come an awfully long way. We need to make sure that whoever succeeds me continues that work in driving the organisation forward, and I'm sure that they will.
Steve White, thanks very much indeed.